Hey, here's part two. So I wanted to continue with what I was talking about in terms of education related to social class and how the social class that you're a part of can really have an impact on what kind of an education you get in our current culture. And as social workers, we want to promote change. We want to help that change. The education culture is a big part of what we call social institutions. And I'm really excited for you to get to read some of Jonathan Kozal. The video that I have for you under the supplemental materials is a really good one, kind of an introduction. We talked about him last week, and I'm sure some of you are reading that book. It's great. It really helps you understand how class really has an impact. Race has an impact on the kind of education people are getting. Location does as well. Poverty does as well. And so as social workers, we work to change that. Another area, another social institution that is important to understand and look at this week is the criminal justice system. In my one of my first jobs as a social worker, actually my internship that I did for graduate school, part of it took place in the Montana Women's Prison. And so I got to see firsthand what happens in prisons. And there's a great video for you to watch under your supplemental materials called the New Asylum, which talks about how prison systems have become kind of mental institutions in our modern times, which is really sad. So people who are in prisons who would be better served in a mental health facility, and perhaps the crime that they committed was something that would not have happened had they been treated for a mental health issue. You will come to recognize the symptoms of things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, a lot of these things, PTSD, these diagnoses that often occur for people who are incarcerated. And you need to understand how we can help these individuals. We're also going to study this week the effects of the military. And I have a short video for you to watch about deployment and the impact that deployment has on military families, particularly children, and how the stress of deployment can really be a challenging experience, not just for the soldier, but also for spouse and children left behind. A big part of the stress of military includes, and a lot of us have known military families, but just that, not being stable, not knowing that you're going to be moving within a few months again for the training and for the different opportunities within the military system. As social workers, we need to be available to these individuals. And a big part of what happens when people have experienced stress, whether it's through these different social institutions or other, is depression, substance abuse, and domestic violence. I want you to be able to talk about these and understand what happens. There is an increased incidence of substance abuse for children who observe parents who are abusing substances. There's also increased need of children not having their needs met. What's interesting, there's an increased need, but also a decreased incidence of children who will not use substances. So there's this attitude of, if mom and dad are abusing substances, if I've seen that and seen the negative aspect of it, then I'm not going there. And so it's really interesting how we have kind of both of these, an increased and a decreased. In terms of depression, a mother who is depressed is going to be more vulnerable to drugs, and her children are also going to be more likely to be dependent on drugs later on in life, and they're more likely to be depressed as well. And it's interesting, there's been a lot of studies about bipolar depression in children of people who have bipolar depression. And sometimes a child might not have that same chemical predilection as their parent does, but they will mimic the action of that parent and mimic the behavior. So if an individual has kind of a downward spiral in terms of thought process about depression, their children might also have that same aptitude. Domestic violence is something that occurs. It's more likely to happen when there is substance abuse going on. It's more likely to happen when there's depression going on. The effects on the children are something you need to understand. Even from just observing domestic violence, children are going to be impacted. And they're less likely to get higher education. They're going to have a decreased self-esteem and an increase, their chances are going to increase in either committing or tolerating domestic violence in their adult lives. And so this cycle of stress and dysfunction can happen with all three of these areas, okay? Depression, substance abuse, and domestic violence can all work together. There's a cycle of stress, a cycle of dysfunction that occurs in individuals. So it's a good week, a lot of good material for you, a lot of learning to be done. I know it's time consuming, and I know everybody's very stressed right now with COVID and with different things going on, but hang in there. We're at week 4. Please don't hesitate to call, text, or email me if you have any questions or concerns.